Dr. Maya Rodriguez never thought her job would lead to this moment. 3 years ago, she had signed up to work security on the biggest space station in the galaxy. It seemed like an adventure, a chance to see different worlds and meet alien species. She had only read about in books. The station floated peacefully between 3 solar systems, serving as a meeting place for diplomats from across the universe. Maya had seen it all during her time there, lizard-like creatures who spoke in musical tones, floating beings made of pure energy, and even rock people who moved so slowly that conversations took hours. But the most fascinating visitors were the Kethmerans. They looked almost human, except for their silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light and their large, dark eyes that seemed to see right through you. Their queen, Zareth, was particularly striking. She carried herself with grace and spoke with a voice that somehow made everyone in the room feel calm. Maya first met the queen during a routine security check. Queen Zareth had been visiting the station for peace talks with neighboring worlds. Her husband, King Vexstar, always accompanied her on these trips. Unlike his wife, the king made Maya feel uncomfortable. There was something about the way he looked at people, like he was studying them for weaknesses. We specifically requested human guards, King Vexstar had told Maya during their first meeting. Your people have interesting instincts, you notice. Things others might miss. At the time, Maya thought it was a compliment. She took pride in her work and her ability to spot trouble before it started. What she didn't know was that the king had a very different reason for wanting human security. The Kethmerans possessed incredible mental abilities. They could read thoughts, influence emotions, and even control the actions of most other species. But humans were different. For some reason, their minds were naturally protected from these powers. To the Kethmerans, humans were like walking mysteries. For King Vexstar, this made humans dangerous. They were the only beings he couldn't manipulate or control, but it also made them useful. If he could convince humans to work for him, they would be the perfect tools for tasks that required complete secrecy. Maya spent her days monitoring the station's security systems, checking visitor credentials, and making sure everyone followed the strict protocols for diplomatic meetings. She enjoyed the work, even if it could be boring at times. The most exciting part of her job was learning about different alien cultures and their customs. Queen Zareth was always kind to Maya. She would stop to chat whenever they crossed paths in the corridors. The queen seemed genuinely interested in human culture and would ask questions about Earth, Maya's family, and her experiences in space. These conversations made Maya feel valued and appreciated. King Vexstar, on the other hand, barely acknowledged Maya's existence. When he did speak to her, it was only to give orders or ask about security arrangements. He treated all the human staff with cold politeness, never cruel, but never warm either. Everything changed during the 3rd year of Maya's assignment. She had been working the night shift, monitoring the security feeds from her office, when something caught her attention. The energy readings from the royal quarters were unusual. The numbers on her screen showed spikes and patterns that didn't match anything in her training manual. Maya ran the readings through the station's computer system. What she found made her blood run cold. The air in Queen Zareth's private chambers contained traces of a chemical compound that was completely harmless to humans, but deadly poisonous to Kethemore-NS. At first, Maya thought it might be a mistake. Maybe the sensors were malfunctioning, or perhaps there was a leak from one of the station's systems. She ran the test again, and then a 3rd time. Each result was the same, confused and worried. Maya decided to investigate further. She accessed the station's visitor logs and cross-referenced them with the security footage from the past few weeks. What she discovered made her stomach turn. King Vexstar had been meeting secretly with individuals who weren't on any official visitor list. These meetings took place in private conference rooms, away from the main diplomatic areas. Maya recognized some of the faces from intelligence briefings. They were known weapons dealers and mercenaries from the Outer Rim territories. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in a way that terrified Maya. The poison in the air system, the secret meetings, the king's insistence on human guards who couldn't read his thoughts. It all pointed to one horrifying conclusion. Maya spent the next few days gathering evidence. She copied security footage, downloaded chemical analysis reports, and even managed to record some of the king's private communications. The picture that emerged was clear and shocking. King Vextar was planning to murder his wife. The motive became obvious when Maya listened to the recorded conversations. The king had been secretly negotiating with the Drexani Empire, a hostile alien civilization known for their aggressive expansion policies. Queen Zareth's commitment to peace and diplomacy stood directly in the way of the king's plans for conquest and war. Maya faced an impossible decision. She was just a security guard, a human working far from home on an alien space station. Who would believe her accusations against one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy? And even if they did believe her, what could she do to stop it? But as she watched Queen Zareth walking through the station's corridors, greeting diplomats and working tirelessly for peace between worlds, Maya knew she couldn't stay silent. The queen had always treated her with kindness and respect. More importantly, if the king succeeded in his plan, it wouldn't just mean the death of one person. It could lead to a war that would destroy countless lives across the galaxy. On the evening when everything changed, Maya had been monitoring the security feeds as usual. She watched Queen Zareth finish her meetings for the day and begin walking toward the royal quarters. Maya's heart pounded as she realized what was about to happen. The queen was walking straight into a trap that had been carefully prepared over weeks. The poisoned air system would activate the moment she entered her private chambers. Within hours, she would be dead, and King Vextar would tell the galaxy that his beloved wife had suffered a tragic accident. Maya made a decision that would change everything. She left her security station and ran through the corridors of the space station, her mind racing with the urgency of what she had to do. She found Queen Zareth just as the alien leader was approaching the entrance to her chambers. The corridor was empty except for the two of them. Maya's hands were shaking as she stepped forward, knowing that this single moment would determine the fate of billions of lives across the galaxy. "Your Majesty," Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with desperate urgency. "Please, you must listen to me. Stay out of your chamber tonight. Your husband plans to harm you." The words hung in the air between them like a bridge that, once crossed, could never be rebuilt. Queen Zareth stared at Maya with those large, dark eyes that seemed to look right into her soul. For a moment that felt like forever, neither of them moved. The court around them was silent except for the gentle hum of the space station's engines. "What did you just say?" the queen asked, her voice so quiet that Maya had to strain to hear it. Maya's heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst. She had just accused the most powerful king in the galaxy of trying to murder his wife. If she was wrong, or if the queen didn't believe her, Maya's life would be over. But she had come too far to back down now. "Your Majesty, I know this sounds crazy, but I have proof. Your husband has been planning something terrible. Please, just give me a chance to show you." The queen looked toward her chamber door, then back at Maya. Something in the human's expression must have convinced her, because she nodded slowly. "Show me," Queen Zareth said. Maya led the queen through the winding corridors of the space station toward the security office. Her hands were shaking as she used her access card to open the door. The room was small and cramped, filled with monitors, showing different areas of the station. Maya quickly pulled up a chair for the queen. "I discovered this 3 days ago," Maya began, pulling up the chemical analysis on her main screen. "These readings are from the air system in your private chambers. Do you see these red marks?" Queen Zareth leaned forward, studying the data. As a leader of an advanced civilization, she understood scientific readings better than most humans ever could. "This compound," she said slowly, pointing at the screen, "it's harmless to most species. But to my people, it's deadly." Maya finished. "I checked it 3 times to make sure. Someone has been pumping this chemical into your chambers for the past week." The queen's silver skin seemed to lose some of its shimmer. Maya could see the shock and disbelief in her eyes, but also something else, the beginning of understanding. But who would do such a thing? And how did they get access to our quarters? Maya took a deep breath. This was the hardest part. Your Majesty, I believe it was your husband. The words hit Queen Zareth like a physical blow. She sat back in her chair, her hand covering her mouth. For several long moments, she said nothing. That's impossible. She finally whispered, Vextar and I have been married for 50 years. We've built our empire together, side by side. He would never. I have more evidence, Maya said gently. She knew how painful this must be for the queen, but she had to show her everything. Maya pulled up the security footage from the past 2 weeks. The recordings showed King Vextar meeting with strangers in private rooms throughout the station. The meetings always happened late at night, when most of the diplomatic staff were asleep. I ran facial recognition on these individuals, Maya explained. 3 of them are known weapons dealers from the outer territories. 2 others are mercenaries who specialize in making deaths look like accidents. Queen Zareth watched the footage in stunned silence. Maya could see tears forming in her large eyes as she recognized her husband's familiar figure. Moving through the corridors in secret, there's more, Maya said softly. She played an audio recording she had managed to capture from one of the meetings. King Vextar's voice filled the small room. The Queen's commitment to peace has become a problem. She refuses to see that sometimes war is necessary for progress. Once she's gone, I'll be free to make the alliances our empire needs. Another voice responded, the Drexani Empire is prepared to support your claim to sole leadership. But the Queen must be removed first, and it must look natural. It will. The king replied, a tragic accident in her chambers. The chemical is undetectable unless you know exactly what to look for. By the time anyone realizes what happened, it will be too late. The recording ended. Leaving the room in terrible silence, Queen Zareth was crying now, silver tears rolling down her cheeks. Maya felt her heart breaking for this powerful woman who had just learned that the person she trusted most in the universe wanted her dead. 50 years, the queen whispered. I thought we shared everything. I thought he loved me. Maya reached out and gently touched the queen's hand. It was cool to the touch, like touching metal, but she could feel it trembling. I'm so sorry, Your Majesty. I know this must be incredibly painful. The queen wiped her tears and straightened in her chair. Maya could see her pulling herself together, calling on the strength that had made her a leader of worlds. Why, she asked, why would he do this? Maya pulled up more evidence, communications between the king and the Drexani Empire, that she had intercepted. The picture they painted was clear and terrifying. He's been negotiating a secret alliance, Maya explained. The Drexani want to expand their territory, but they need someone to help them from the inside. Your husband promised to help them conquer other worlds in exchange for power and wealth. But our people would never support such a war, the queen said. That's why he needs you gone. Your influence with the people is too strong. As long as you're alive, they'll follow your path of peace. But if something happens to you, and he's the only ruler left, Queen Zareth stood up suddenly, pacing the small room like a caged animal. Maya could see her mind working, processing all the implications of what she had learned. How long do we have? The queen asked. I don't know. The chemical buildup in your chambers suggests he was planning to activate the full dose tonight. If you had gone to sleep in there. They were interrupted by the sound of alarms blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside the security office. Maya quickly checked her monitors and felt her blood turn to ice. What's happening? Queen Zareth demanded. It's your husband's guards, Maya said, watching the armed figures moving through the station corridors. They're searching for you. The computer shows they've issued an alert saying you've taken ill and need immediate medical attention. The queen and Maya looked at each other with growing horror. King Vextar had realized his wife wasn't in her chambers. Now he was hunting for her, probably planning to finish the job in a different way. We have to get you out of here, Maya said, her mind racing. If his guards find us, we're both dead. But where can we go? This is his station now. His guards control every exit. Maya was already moving, gathering equipment and data storage devices. She had been studying the station's layout for 3 years, learning every corridor and maintenance tunnel for security purposes. Now that knowledge might be the only thing standing between them and death, I know a way. She said, but we have to move fast, and your majesty, yes, from now on, trust no one except me. Your husband has had years to place his people throughout the station. We don't know who else might be working for him. The sound of boots in the corridor was getting closer. Maya grabbed the queen's hand and led her toward a maintenance panel in the back wall of the security office. This way, she whispered, and stay close. Our lives depend on it. The maintenance tunnel was barely wide enough for two people to crawl through side by side. Maya led the way, using a small flashlight to navigate the dark passage while Queen Zareth followed close. Behind, the metal walls around them vibrated with the sound of the station's machinery, but Maya could still hear the heavy footsteps of guards searching the corridors above them. Where are we going? The queen whispered, her voice echoing softly in the confined space. Docking Bay 7, Maya replied, not slowing down. I prepared an escape route months ago, just in case something like this ever happened. There's a small diplomatic shuttle there that should be fueled and ready. Maya had always been careful about her job. During her 3 years on the station, she had memorized every emergency exit, every service tunnel, and every possible way to move around without being detected. She never thought she would need this knowledge to save someone's life. The tunnel system was like a maze beneath the main station. Maya had spent countless hours exploring these passages during her off-duty time, telling herself it was just good security practice. Now she was grateful for every minute of that exploration. They crawled for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Maya's knees ached from moving across the metal floor, and she could hear the queen breathing heavily behind her, despite being from an advanced alien civilization. Queen Zareth was keeping up remarkably well. Stop! Maya whispered suddenly, holding up her hand through a ventilation grate above them. Maya could see the boots of several guards walking through the corridor. She recognized the heavy black boots worn by King Vextar as personal security force. These weren't regular station guards. They were the king's most loyal soldiers. Maya and the queen pressed themselves flat against the tunnel floor, barely breathing as the guards passed overhead. Maya could hear them talking in low voices about search patterns and securing exits. Her heart sank as she realized how organized this hunt had become. They're blocking all the main docking bays. One guard said, "What about the service bays?" Another asked, "Covered." The king wants every possible exit monitored. She can't leave this station alive. The voices faded as the guards moved on, but Maya felt a chill run down her spine. King Vextar wasn't just trying to capture his wife. He had given orders to prevent her from leaving the station entirely. Did you hear that? Queen Zareth whispered. Maya nodded grimly. He's not taking any chances. But don't worry. I know these tunnels better than his guards do. We'll find another way. They continued crawling through the maintenance system, taking turns and following passages that Maya had mapped in her mind. The queen never complained. Even though Maya could tell she was exhausted, there was something inspiring about her determination to survive. After another 10 minutes of crawling, they reached a junction where several tunnels met. Maya stopped and pulled out a small device that looked like a phone but was actually a scanner she used for security work. "What are you doing?" the queen asked. "Checking for life signs in the area above us," Maya explained. "I need to know if it's safe to come out." The scanner showed several red dots moving through the corridors nearby, but the path to Docking Bay 7 appeared to be clear. Maya felt a surge of hope. "Okay, we're almost there," she said. "Just one more section of tunnel, and then we'll be at the docking bay." But as they started moving again, Maya heard something that made her blood freeze. The sound of metal being cut. Someone was breaking into the tunnel system behind them. They found our entry point. Maya whispered urgently, "We need to move faster." The last section of tunnel seemed endless. Maya could hear the sounds of pursuit getting closer behind them, voices echoing through the passages, metal clanging as guards forced their way through the narrow spaces. She pushed herself harder, ignoring the pain in her knees and the burning in her lungs. Finally, They reached the access panel that led to docking bay 7. Maya carefully removed the cover and peered out into the bay. What she saw made her heart sink. The bay wasn't empty as she had hoped. King Vextar stood in the center of the area with a dozen of his elite guards surrounding him. The diplomatic shuttle Maya had been counting on was there, but it might as well have been on another planet. He knew, Queen Zareth whispered, looking over Maya's shoulder. Somehow, he figured out where we were going. Maya's mind raced. How had the king known about her escape plan? She had never told anyone about the shuttle or her knowledge of the tunnel system. Unless he's been watching me, Maya realized. All this time, he's been monitoring the human staff. He probably knows about every security measure I've put in place. King Vextar's voice carried across the docking bay. Cold and commanding. I know you're in there, my dear wife. There's no point in hiding anymore. Come out, and we can discuss this like civilized beings. Maya looked at Queen Zareth and saw determination in her eyes instead of fear. The queen had made a decision. I'm going out there, she said quietly. No. Maya grabbed her arm. That's exactly what he wants. The moment you show yourself, his guards will attack. Then what do you suggest? We can't stay in here forever, and we can't go back the way we came. Maya studied the docking bay through the small opening. The king's guards were positioned around the shuttle, but they were focused on the main entrance to the bay. There was another way, a maintenance ladder that led up to the bay's control room. If she could reach those controls, I have an idea, Maya said. But it's dangerous, and I'll need you to trust me completely. Before the queen could respond, Maya was already moving. She slipped out of the tunnel and began climbing the maintenance ladder as quietly as possible. The ladder was attached to the side wall of the docking bay, partially hidden by support beams and equipment. Maya's plan was simple but risky. The docking bay's emergency systems included blast doors that could seal the area in case of hull breach. If she could reach the control room and activate those doors, she could separate the king from some of his guards and create confusion. She climbed steadily, trying not to look down at the armed figures below. Her hands were sweating, making it hard to grip the ladder rungs. About halfway up, one of the guards happened to look in her direction. There, he shouted, pointing at Maya. On the ladder, immediately, the docking bay erupted in chaos. Guards ran toward the ladder while others aimed their weapons at Maya. King Vextar's voice rose above the confusion, ordering his men to capture her alive. Maya climbed faster than she had ever climbed in her life. Energy bolts from the guards' weapons sparked against the metal around her, but she kept moving upward, just a few more meters to the control room. She reached the control room just as the first guard started climbing the ladder below her. Maya's hands flew over the control panel, activating the emergency systems she had studied but never used. The blast doors began to close with a deep rumbling sound. Half of the king's guards were suddenly separated from the other half, trapped on different sides of the bay. In the confusion, Maya saw Queen Zareth emerge from the tunnel and run toward the shuttle. But King Vextar had anticipated this move. He raised his own weapon and aimed it directly at his wife. Stop right there, Zareth. He called out. I had hoped to make this look like an accident, but if you insist on being difficult, Maya realized she had only seconds to act. Without thinking, she jumped from the control room platform, landing hard on the docking bay floor between the king and queen. Pain shot through her leg, but she forced herself to stand. Run, she shouted to Queen Zareth. Get to the shuttle, King. Vextar's weapon fired, but Maya threw herself to the side, rolling behind a cargo container. The energy bolt missed her by inches, leaving a smoking hole in the wall behind her. Maya could hear the shuttle's engines starting up. Queen Zareth had made it to the ship and was preparing for launch, but the king's remaining guards were closing in on Maya's position, and she knew there was no way she could reach the shuttle in time. From behind the cargo container, Maya watched as the shuttle began to lift off. Through the cockpit window, she could see Queen Zareth looking back at her with an expression of gratitude and sorrow. As the shuttle disappeared into the darkness of space, Maya smiled despite her desperate situation. She had done it. The queen was safe. And now the galaxy would learn the truth about King Vextar's treachery. The last thing Maya heard before the guards reached her was the Queen's voice over the station's communication system. People of the galaxy, this is Queen Zared H. I am alive. And I have a story to tell you about betrayal and the courage of one human who saved not just my life, but the peace we all hold dear. Queen Zareth's hands trembled as she guided the small diplomatic shuttle through the darkness of space behind her. The massive space station grew smaller with each passing moment, but she knew King Vextar's ships would soon be hunting her. She had escaped with her life, but Maya's sacrifice weighed heavily on her heart. The shuttle's communication system crackled to life. Messages were pouring in from across the galaxy, some expressing shock at her sudden broadcast, others demanding explanations. But there was one signal that caught her attention immediately. Unknown vessel. This is Captain Torres of the Merchant Ship Phoenix. Are you in need of assistance? Queen Zareth hesitated. She didn't know this person, and after what had happened with her husband, trusting anyone felt dangerous. But she was alone in a small shuttle with limited fuel, and she needed help to get her story to the right people. This is Queen Zareth of the Kethmaran Empire, she replied carefully. I am seeking safe passage to Nexus Prime. There was a long pause before Captain Torres responded. Your Majesty, this is an honor. Please dock with our ship. We'll provide whatever assistance you need. 20 minutes later, Queen Zareth found herself aboard a human cargo vessel that was surprisingly clean and well-maintained. Captain Torres turned out to be a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and calloused hands that spoke of years of honest work. I heard your broadcast, Captain Torres said as she led the Queen to her private quarters. That was incredibly brave of you to speak out like that. I had to, the Queen replied. A human security guard named Maya Rodriguez saved my life. She died so that I could escape and tell the truth. I owe it to her memory to make sure everyone knows what really happened. Captain Torres nodded gravely. Maya sounds like she was a remarkable person. But Your Majesty, if what you said is true, then King Vextar will be doing everything he can to discredit your story. You'll need more than just your word to convince the galaxy. The Queen had been thinking the same thing during her flight from the station. Maya had shown her evidence, but most of it was still back in the security office. She had managed to save some data files on a small storage device, but would it be enough? I have some proof, she said, showing Captain Torres the device. But you're right, I need more. I need to find someone who can help me investigate this properly and get the information to the right people. Captain Torres smiled. I think I know just the person. There's a journalist on Nexus Prime named Alex Chen. He's been investigating corruption in galactic politics for years. If anyone can help you expose the truth, it's him. The journey to Nexus Prime took 2 days. During that time, Queen Zareth worked with Captain Torres to organize the evidence she had. The storage device contained security footage, chemical analysis reports, and fragments of recorded conversations between King Vextar and his conspirators. But as they studied the information together, both women realized how much bigger this conspiracy was than either had imagined. The evidence showed that Vextar hadn't just planned to kill his wife. He had been systematically removing other leaders who opposed his alliance with the Rexani Empire. Look at this, Captain Torres said, pointing to a list of names on the screen. These are all political leaders who have died in accidents over the past 2 years. The timing matches up with your husband's secret meetings. Queen Zareth felt sick as she recognized some of the names. These had been her friends and allies, people who had worked alongside her for peace and cooperation between worlds. She had attended their funerals, comforted their families, never suspecting that her own husband had been responsible for their deaths. He's been planning this for years, she whispered, while I was working for peace. He was murdering anyone who stood in his way. When they arrived at Nexus Prime, Queen Zareth was amazed by the diversity of the trading station. Beings from hundreds of different worlds conducted business in the massive marketplace that occupied the station's central area. For the first time since her escape, she felt a glimmer of hope. Here, surrounded by so many different species working together. The ideals she had fought for still seemed possible. Alex Chen turned out to be a young human journalist with an intense curiosity and a reputation for fearlessly investigating powerful people. He listened to Queen Zareth's story with growing amazement and anger. "This is bigger than anything I've ever worked on," he said after reviewing all the evidence. "If we can prove this, it will change everything. But Your Majesty, you need to understand, King Vexstar won't just sit back and let us expose him. He'll fight back with everything he has." Even as Alex spoke, news reports were coming in from across the galaxy. King Vexstar had declared his wife officially dead, claiming she had been killed in a terrorist attack on the space station. He was positioning himself as a grieving widower who needed the full support of his people during this difficult time. "He's moving fast," Alex observed. "Look at these reports. He's already announcing new military alliances and talking about the need to strengthen defenses against hostile forces. He's using your supposed death to justify exactly the kind of aggressive policies you opposed." Queen Zareth watched the news broadcast with growing horror. Her husband appeared on screen, his face a perfect mask of grief and determination. To anyone who didn't know the truth, he looked like a leader responding to tragedy with strength and resolve. "We have to stop him," she said. "If he consolidates power and forms an alliance with the Drexani Empire, it will mean war across the galaxy. Millions of innocent people will die." Alex nodded grimly. "I agree, but we need more evidence. What you have is compelling, but it's not enough to bring down someone as powerful as King Vexstar. We need proof that will be undeniable to everyone." Over the next few hours, Alex used his network of contacts throughout the galaxy to gather additional information. What they discovered was even more disturbing than Queen Zareth had feared. The Drexani Empire had been preparing for this moment for years. They had ships positioned near the borders of peaceful worlds, waiting for the signal to begin their conquest. King Vexstar's rise to sole power was the final piece of their invasion plan. "According to my sources," Alex said, "the Drexani fleet is already moving toward the outer colonies. They're not waiting for your husband to consolidate power. They're starting their attacks now, while the galaxy is distracted by news of your death." Queen Zareth felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on her. Every moment they delayed meant more lives lost to Vexstar's treachery. "What can we do?" she asked. "How do we stop an invasion that's already begun?" Alex was quiet for a long moment, studying the data on his screen. When he finally looked up, his expression was determined. "We go public with everything," he said. "I have contacts at every major news network in the galaxy. We'll broadcast the evidence simultaneously across all channels, making it impossible for King Vexstar to suppress or discredit the information." "But will people believe it?" Queen Zareth asked. "He's very convincing, and he'll have his own version of events. That's why we need you," Alex replied. "You're not just presenting evidence. You're living proof that his story is a lie. When people see you alive and hear you tell your story in your own words, they'll know the truth." As they prepared for the broadcast that would shake the galaxy, Queen Zareth thought about Maya Rodriguez. The human security guard had given her life to make this moment possible. Now it was up to the Queen to make sure that sacrifice hadn't been in vain. "Maya believed that one person could make a difference," she said to Alex. "She proved it by saving my life. Now we have to prove it again by saving the galaxy from my husband's ambitions." Alex smiled as he made the final preparations for their broadcast. "Your Majesty, after what you've been through and what you're about to do, I think Maya would be very proud of you." The broadcast was set to begin in just a few hours, but Queen Zareth knew their real work was just beginning. Exposing the truth would be only the first step in stopping a war that threatened to destroy everything she had spent her life building. The broadcast went live across every major communication network in the galaxy at exactly midnight, Galactic Standard Time. Queen Zareth sat in the small studio on Nexus Prime, looking directly into the camera as Alex Chen managed the technical aspects of their transmission. "People of the galaxy," she began, her voice steady despite the enormous weight of what she was about to reveal. 3 days ago, my husband King Vexstar told you that I was dead, killed in a terrorist attack. As you can see, I am very much alive. What I'm about to tell you will shock you, but every word is true. For the next hour, Queen Zareth laid out the entire conspiracy. She showed the evidence Maya had gathered, played the recorded conversations between her husband and the weapons dealers, and explained how the brave human security guard had sacrificed her life to save not just the queen, but the peace of the entire galaxy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes of the broadcast ending, communication networks across the galaxy were buzzing with activity. On the Kethmern homeworld, crowds began gathering in the streets, demanding answers from their government. King Vexstar's reaction was swift and predictable. He appeared on official channels within hours, claiming that the broadcast was a fake created by enemies of the Empire. He insisted that his wife was dead, and that someone was using advanced technology to impersonate her. This is clearly a desperate attempt by terrorist organizations to destabilize our government, he declared, his face a mask of righteous anger. I will not allow the memory of my beloved wife to be dishonored by these lies. But Alex Chen had anticipated this response. He had spent years building relationships with journalists and investigators throughout the galaxy, and now those connections proved invaluable. Independent verification of the evidence began pouring in from multiple sources. Dr. Patricia Williams, a human forensic expert on the diplomatic station, confirmed that the chemical analysis Maya had performed was accurate. The poison found in the Queen's chambers was exactly as described, and the timing matched the security footage perfectly. Commander Zhang Wei, head of station security, came forward with additional surveillance recordings that showed King Vexstar's secret meetings. He also revealed that several human security guards had reported suspicious activities to their supervisors, but their concerns had been dismissed by officials loyal to the king. Most damaging of all was testimony from Captain Elena Vasquez, a human military officer who had been present during some of the king's negotiations with Drexani representatives. She provided detailed accounts of conversations where Vexstar had explicitly discussed his plans to eliminate his wife and seize total control of the Empire. As more evidence emerged, the situation on the Kethmern homeworld became increasingly unstable. The planet's military was split between those loyal to King Vexstar and those who believed Queen Zareth's story. Protests erupted in major cities, with citizens demanding that their queen return home to reclaim her rightful place as leader. Queen Zareth knew she had to act quickly. Every day she remained in exile, more people would die as the conflict escalated. The Drexani Empire had already begun attacking outer colonies, using the chaos surrounding her supposed death as cover for their aggression. I have to go back, she told Alex and Captain Torres, as they watched reports of the growing civil unrest on her homeworld. My people need me. It's too dangerous, Captain Torres protested. Vexstar still controls much of the military. If you return now, you'll be walking into a trap. But Queen Zareth had made up her mind. Maya died so that I could tell the truth. Now I have to finish what she started. The galaxy is at war because of my husband's lies, and I'm the only one who can stop it. Alex had been working on a plan through his network of contacts. He had identified several high-ranking military officers on the Kethmern homeworld who had privately expressed doubts about King Vexstar's version of events. These officers controlled key installations and could provide safe passage for the Queen's return. The journey back to her homeworld was the longest of Queen Zareth's life. She traveled aboard a small fleet of ships commanded by Captain Torres and other human traders who had volunteered to help. Along the way, they were joined by vessels from other species who had decided to support the Queen's cause. When they finally reached the Kethmern system, they found a world in chaos. King Vexstar had declared martial law and was using his loyal forces to suppress the protests, but his control was slipping. Large sections of the population had risen up in support of their queen, and several major cities were no longer under government control. The final confrontation took place in the Great Assembly Hall. the ancient building where Kethmaran leaders had met for thousands of years. King Vextar had called an emergency session to announce his new alliance with the Rexani Empire, hoping to present the military pact as a done deal that couldn't be reversed. Queen Zereth arrived just as her husband was addressing the assembled nobles and military. "Commanders!" The massive doors at the back of the hall burst open, and she walked in flanked by Alex Chen, Captain Torres, and a group of human supporters who had helped her expose the truth. The silence in the hall was absolute. King Vextar stood frozen. At the podium, his face cycling through shock, fear, and desperate calculation. The assembled leaders stared at their queen as if seeing a ghost. "Hello, husband," Queen Zereth said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "I believe you've been telling people I'm dead." The next few minutes were a blur of accusations, denials, and revelations. King Vextar tried desperately to maintain his story, but the evidence was overwhelming. Queen Zereth presented each piece of proof methodically, building an undeniable case against her husband. The final blow came when Alex played a recording that had been discovered in Maya's personal files, a conversation between King Vextar and a Drexani commander discussing specific plans for the invasion of peaceful worlds. "The humans are more useful than I expected," Vextar's voice said clearly through the hall's speakers. "Once I eliminate my wife and consolidate power, we can begin the systematic conquest of the outer systems. The galaxy will never know what hit them." As the recording ended, the assembly erupted in angry voices. Military commanders who had supported the king began backing away from him, their loyalty shattered by the undeniable proof of his treachery. Within hours, King Vextar was stripped of his crown and taken into custody. The Drexani invasion fleet, learning that their ally had fallen, retreated to their own territory. The threat of galactic war had been averted, but the cost had been enormous. Queen Zereth stood before her people as their sole ruler, but she felt the weight of all the lives lost due to her husband's ambitions. In her first address as the undisputed leader of her empire, she spoke about Maya Rodriguez and the other humans who had helped save the galaxy. "We owe our freedom to the courage of individuals who risked everything for what was right," she said. "Maya Rodriguez, a human security guard who barely knew me, chose to save my life rather than save her own. Alex Chen risked his career to help me tell the truth. Captain Torres and countless other humans provided aid when I had nowhere else to turn. As a lasting tribute to Maya's sacrifice, Queen Zereth established the Rodriguez Accord, a new framework for cooperation between human and alien civilizations. She also created a memorial center on the diplomatic station where Maya had worked, ensuring that future generations would remember the security guard who had changed the course of history. But perhaps the most important change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity itself. No longer seen as a primitive species on the edge of civilized space, humans were now recognized as valuable allies whose unique perspectives and moral courage made them essential partners in building a peaceful future. Years later, when historians wrote about the events that prevented a galactic war, they would focus on the bravery of one human woman who saw injustice and refused to stay silent. Maya Rodriguez had proven that sometimes the most ordinary people can do the most extraordinary things, changing not just their own lives, but the destiny of countless worlds.